Today we're going to talk about rational and irrational numbers. The outcomes today are that students will approximate the location of rational and irrational numbers on a number line. You'll classify numbers as rational or irrational, and if it is rational, if it is an integer, a whole number, or a natural number. So number one, as you'll see here, I have all the work done for you, so as I go along speaking, you guys can fill in the work and the correct answer choice, as well as add anything else that you feel you need in order to understand this. So one says, where would radical 5 fall on our number line? Well, the way we figure it out is we type the square root of 5 in our calculator. The square root button is your second x squared button on the calculator, and then you just type a 5. And it gives you 2.23606. Well, when I round it, I just said 2.23. 2.23 is between 2 and 3, so radical 5 falls between 2 and 3 on the number line. And I did the same thing with number 2, radical 30. You take the square root of 30 in your calculator, you get 5.48. Well, 5.48 is a number between 5 and 6, so that's choice A. When we don't have multiple choice, we're going to have a little bit more work with these. We are still going to do the same idea with problems that are not decimals. In this case, we want to place this list of numbers here on this number line. I know it's a little squished, and I'm sorry for that, but I think you'll understand as I go along. What I did first was anything that was not a decimal, I typed it in my calculator to get the value that it is. So 0.75 is just 0.75. I didn't touch that. 4/8 is 0.5. 1.8, I didn't have to change around. The square root of 4 is 2. And the square root of 45 is 6.7. And 9 divided by 3, or 9/3, is 3. From there, I just had to place them on a number line. So, if I start with 0.75, that's between 0 and 1. So you'll notice I drew a line between 0 and 1, and I labeled it as 0.75. 4/8 is 0.5. 0.5 is also between 0 and 1, but it's less than 0.75. 0.5 is less than 0.7, that first 10th number there. So I put a line there and I labeled it 4/8. You can put it on the bottom if you can fit it. I couldn't fit it that well, that's why I labeled it on the top. And I used a different color as well. 1.8 is between 1 and 2, and it's closer to 2. So I drew a line close to 2, I labeled it as 1.8. Radical 4 is 2. So right on 2, I labeled it as radical 4. Radical 45 is 6.7. Well, that's between 6 and 7. Notice I labeled it as radical 45. 9/3 is exactly 3, so on 3, I labeled it as 9/3. Number 4 is the same idea. Now that bar on top of the 0.666 or 0.6 means 0.6 repeating, so it just means it goes 0.66666 forever. 12/7, 12 divided by 7 is 1.71. 7.25, I didn't have to change. The square root of 49 is 7. The square root of 90 is 9.49. And 20 divided by 2 is equal to 10. From there, now that I have my decimals, I can label them on a number line. 0.6 is between 0 and 1. So I labeled it between 0 and 1, a little closer to 1 is 0.66. 12/7 was 1.71, that's between 1 and 2. I labeled it as 12/7. 7.25 is between 7 and 8, a little closer to the 7. Radical 49 is exactly 7. So right on the 7 line, I labeled it as radical 49. Radical 90 is between 9 and 10, very close to 9.5, so right in between, I labeled it as radical 90. And 20/2 is equal to 10, so right on the 10 line, I labeled it as 20/2. Last question we have, determine if the following statements are true or false and explain. I want you to explain whether it is true or whether it is false. So negative, and we did this a little bit today, negative 12 is a rational number. In order for a number to be a rational number, it has to be able to be expressed as a fraction of two integers. So 12 and 1 are integers. I can express it as a fraction. So it is a rational number, true. And that was my reasoning. Negative 12 can be expressed as negative 12/1, which is a fraction with two integers. 2.5 is an integer. Well, that's false. An integer cannot be a decimal, so that's why this is false. 2.5 is a decimal. Radical 17 is an irrational number. An irrational number is if I were to type radical 17 in my calculator, I would notice it is a decimal that does not repeat and does not end. So that is a true statement. Now, I told you the reasoning. After this video is completed, please write down the reasoning I told you. 0 is a natural number. Well, that's false. I'm going to have you guys look back and see what a natural number is. And then radical 36 is a whole number. That's true. The reason is because radical 36 is equal to 6. That's not a fraction or a decimal. It's also not negative. So radical 36 is a whole number. At this point, what I'd like you to do is please fill in the reasoning for the radical 17 being an irrational number and the reason for 0 not being a natural number. When you come to class tomorrow, I will check that this full thing, that this page is completed.